Hi, and welcome to Lesbian Visibility Week. Firstly, I want to thank Linda Riley, who's not just the publisher of Diva magazine, but who also founded Lesbian Visibility Week. So yeah, such an important week for us to make visible all of our voices. My name is Valentino Vecchietti. My pronouns are she and they. I'm a lesbian. I was born with an intersex variation. I'm the intersex columnist at Diva magazine. And I'm hugely honoured today to be with playwright, academic, mentor, teacher, all-round fantastically brilliant person, Mojisola Adebayo, who is an award-winning playwright. I'm going to read your bio. Just, I hope I'm not embarrassing you with all this with this wonderfulness. But yeah, so Mojisola is a playwright, performer, director, producer, mentor, workshop facilitator, and teacher who has been making theatre for social change internationally for over 30 years. Currently, Mojisola has her two plays on, actually. We're going to talk about Stars today, but so Stars with theatre company, Tamasha Theatre Company, and is currently running at the Institute of Contemporary Arts, which we're going to talk about now. But also there's a link in the info to Mojisola's website, where you can see the details for the tour of Stars, as well as Family Tree, which is also running at the moment. Welcome, Mojisola.
Thank you so much, Valentino. It's such a pleasure to be here with an even more fantastic person. You're my hero, you're my shero, you're my theyro. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to see you. You're such you're so busy. You produce so much work. You travel all over the world. I wanted to start though by asking you to share with all the wonderful watchers at Lesbian Visibility Week, just to share something about who you are and what inspires your work, in relation to your own intersectionality as well.
Yeah, as you said, I'm a theatre maker. I'm very much an all-rounder. I'm known more as a playwright these days, but I like to think of myself as a collaborator, kind of working across disciplines, working with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and also working across this kind of what I see as a false dividers between professional and community practice. And I suppose that says a lot about me, and that's a kind of intersectional kind of approach even to the craft of theatre making. And the desire really to bring people together from lots of different parts of the community, and also lots of different creative spheres. So, for example, Mod of the Antarctic, which was a piece of work that I made nearly 20 years ago now, was very much in collaboration with the intersex and formerly lesbian artist Della Grace Volcano. So that was a intersection between photography and theatre. And Stars, my most recent work, is a collaboration between myself, you in many ways as a consultant on the project, Debo, who's a DJ, Amma Ray, who's a choreographer, Gail Babb, who's more of a theatre maker. So I love to bring people of different disciplines together, and that also says a lot about me.
It really does. It's really inspiring to hear about your work and to hear about the way you interweave different elements to uplift people's voices, to uplift, our narratives. I've read a wonderful interview with you talking when you were talking about the other play that you've got running at the moment, as well as Stars, and you were talking about kind of uplifting voices from people existing at the edge of society, and how rich and our stories are. And I really feel that that's such an important, for me, that's such an important element of your work. When I first met you, it was really one of the most inspiring moments in my kind of career. I'd just not a couple years before written a comic that I was thinking, can I make this into a play? And learning about the way you did your work, and you inviting me to work together with you as the intersex consultant on Stars, really made a difference to, I guess, my self-esteem as a intersex lesbian writer, wanting to do something and feeling seen by you. And I think that's quite rare to see somebody at your level and in your career, you know, who sees us the kind of when we're trying to do things. And that meeting with you and the work we did together served both as an example to me of how it could be done right, you know, mm-hmm. and also as a sort of an inspiration of a hope that I could, you know, in some ways follow the way you work, in some ways, you know, understand myself and understand what's possible to do. Yeah. I wanted to kind of sorry, I'm just like saying these things, but I think it does really matter. If you could tell us about the inspiration behind Stars, about some of the narratives which are really complex, and narratives that some people would shy away from, you know, really at all, that we couldn't believe might become a joyful play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's yeah, it's such a, you know, a good observation about Stars. What we're trying to do is to bring together some themes that might not at first seem to lead us to pleasure, and to feelings of pleasure and thoughts about pleasure, but that's the key sort of concept in the piece, and the theme of pleasure, and not just pleasure for its own sake, but the political power of pleasure, and to question what happens when pleasure is repressed, cut off, controlled, and very much thinking through the body. So Stars is the story of an elderly woman who goes into space in search of her own orgasm, because she's never had one and she wants one, and she's got it into her head that that's where all the orgasms go, outer space, kind of, I saw stars, the earth moved, etc. And so there's a kind of very kind of playful and light and kind of uplifting kind of description of the piece, I suppose. But it deals with some more challenging issues through these three encounters. So there's an encounter with a girl child, who this old lady called Mrs., who's only kind of known as Mrs. Until the end. An encounter with a child who we discover has been through a traditional harmful practice, also known as FGM. She has an encounter, or a memory of an encounter, with a would-be lesbian lover in a launderette, who tries to coax Mrs. into discovering herself and freeing herself. And then an encounter, which is the longest scene in the play, and the one that I think is the most uplifting and powerful, so that says a lot about you, Valentino. It's a scene that we worked on together, is an encounter with a friend who comes out as intersex, and who has not experienced a harmful non-consensual surgery, as so many intersex people do, as you've taught me about. However, has become a kind of campaigner, really, from her own living room, and has educated herself, and is absolutely advocating for what she describes, in your words, as bodily integrity and the power of pleasure. And all the characters are in the play are Black or mixed heritage or Asian. And so that feels really, really important as well, that we're putting queerness and Blackness, which is so often considered a separate thing, and that hopefully that's changing, but very much together. And that comes back to my kind of thoughts about, you asked me in the beginning about intersectionality, and I consider myself Afro-queer, like African and queer together. And I don't like to separate those things. So that's also really, really important in the piece, that this is a kind of these are kind of Afro-queer perspectives. And what you were saying was so beautifully about being seen, I suppose, that doesn't come from nowhere. It's very much informed by my work in places like South Africa, where there's this philosophy of Ubuntu. I am who I am because you are who you are. I am me through you and you are you through me. And we are connected and we exist in connection with each other. Which is really at the heart of Southern African kind of philosophy, but I think it is conveyed throughout the African continent in different ways. Of course, that's been corrupted and suppressed through colonialism and religions and all that kind of thing. But I like to think of that kind of seeing each other and acknowledging each other and being together and having a feeling of togetherness comes from that kind of my background as an African queer person, and also my political background in terms of socialism and, you know, LGBTIQ rights and all of those things. Those things don't come from nowhere. They're not just because I'm a nice person, but they're political.
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing you speak. I love hearing you talk about the threads of meaning in your work and in your practice. And I really want people, potential writers, potential creatives watching, listening to us speak and watching this video, to feel inspired to be driven to create work, you know, really rooted in their beliefs, in their sense of things, in their understanding, and to know that their voices matter. And I really, hearing you speak, hearing the philosophy behind what you're saying, it really is centered around that who we are matters, that we, you know, absolutely are connected, and the stories that we have to tell are meaningful. It's, you know, and it matters so much because we don't see representation. We don't see or hear narratives exploring the sorts of oppressions that we experience as women as well, you know, whether it be as non-binary people, whether it be as intersex women, as trans women, as cis women, the stories, you know, that center around being lesbians, all these as well as that intersection as well. I'm here with the flag, and I'm thinking of Amber Hikes creating that intersectionality of the black and brown stripes, which I've included here in when I created the intersex inclusive pride flag. But that notion of that intersectionality, of our heritage, our background, so that we're all seen and included and recognized as belonging. I wanted to talk about the Afrofuturist element as well. I think some people won't know about that, and I'm excited for people to run in and explore Afrofuturism. And I wondered if you could, share some of that element.
Yeah, the Afrofuturism was very much, you know, came from wanting to deal with some painful subject matter in the play, but wanting to give myself some kind of emotional distance from the material, because a lot of the experiences that the central character has been through, I've also been through, but not in her exact life, you know, as an elderly person. So I decided to set the play slightly in the future, very slightly in the future, and also to give the central character desire to go into space and to explore space travel, which is where the Afrofuturism kind of comes in. And there's lots and lots of references to Star Trek and Star Wars and black astronauts, and, you know, so anybody into all of that will enjoy it. And that's also why I make the central character much older than myself, to also give me some distance, both through the age and through the time in the future, and also through the kind of space travel. So that was the kind of premise I was working with, also to kind of look after myself. But then when I started to delve into it, it was so exciting, because I thought, I need, if I'm going to bring all these themes of like FGM and intersexness and lesbian identity and experience together, and queerness together, black queerness together, as a black lesbian, how am I going to do this? How am I going to hold all these themes together? And so I started researching, and came across this the Dogon culture of West Africa in Mali, that have this extraordinary history of astronomy, not just history, it's very, very, very present. Their culture was the first to, way before Europeans even invented telescopes, to see that they believed that Sirius B existed, which is a star, before you could ever see it with the naked eye. Their cave paintings, they drew the Earth revolving around the sun. They knew that the Earth came from a big bang. They saw the rings of Saturn, all without telescopes. And they have this incredible astronomical knowledge that no European anthropologist or scientist has ever been able to explain how they had this knowledge. And so they have this incredible creation story that they actually originate from what is essentially an intersex deity, Nomo, that has come from Sirius B, which is the most fantastic creation story and science and astronomy all mixed up together. And I thought, wow, this holds all of my themes together, because the flip side of this story of the Nomo is there is also another version of the story which justifies gender-based traditional harmful surgery. So I couldn't really believe it was a kind of unwanted gift, really, of both a wanted gift in terms of this wonderful Afro-queer, Afro-futurist, Afro-pastist mythology and science, together with this justification of traditional harmful practice. So I thought, okay, then this Dogon imagery will hold the piece together. So a lot of this is drawn through the hand-drawn animation from Candice Perwin, who's an incredible, beautiful queer artist who has drawn the animation that goes all the way through the show. And a lot of that animation is inspired by Dogon. I want to say Afrofuturism, but it's also of the past, it's kind of beyond time. So yeah, there's a lot in there.
There really is. And it comes across when you're watching the play, just the richness of the text, the richness of knowledge that's being shared with all of us. And coming back to those themes of harmful cultural practice and the intersex non-essential medical interventions, that, the notion, I suppose, that's told to us especially in Western society is that, harmful cultural practice is a cultural practice, is something because of culture, because of stigma and shame in culture. And then for people with intersex variations, we find that similar practice occurs, but in medical settings, in hospitals, are performed by doctors and surgeons. And so the reality of it is both practices are driven by notions of stigma and shame in society, and the stigma and shame that people imagine will happen if our bodies are intact and if our bodies can just exist as they are. So what I'm referring to, just for people watching our video regarding non-consensual, non-essential medical interventions for people with intersex variations, is that in our if we're born with visible natural diversity in our genitalia, in our or in our chromosomes, the typical medical practice is to advise that we wouldn't be able to lead happy lives in society. We would be it would be better to change our bodies because there's so much stigma in society that we wouldn't be accepted, and it would be better for us if we were changed, rather than the notion that we might educate society and change the way things are going, because that would be a leap too far. And I think, of course, we all know, hearing this, we can think about conversion therapy, which is also a thread that goes through your play. And there's a beautiful, powerful scene involving religion and conversion therapy. So many threads of what you talk about in this play, which you wrote quite some years ago, are so highly relevant, even when you're talking about Brexit and Spexit, going into space. But those sort of notions, bringing those strands together around what we're allowed to have how much diversity we're allowed to have, whether it be in our bodies or our sexual orientations, whether it be, and also in relation to pleasure, in relation to how we exist in our bodies. I think that feeling of, very strong feeling of Mrs., the main character, of how she exists in her body, how she, or rather how she doesn't feel allowed to exist in her body, how all these things are barriers for her, and how she slowly kind of, through her stories, through her memories, she slowly unpeels, you know, the barriers that are kind of crushing her. And there's a wonderful piece with Shelley, a lesbian that she meets. And I just,
It's now Shahana.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. It was originally Shelley, and I thought,
Yeah, sorry,
let me bring in my South Asian lesbian sisters in here. So I changed it to Shahana.
Fantastic. I was just checking in the book, and which I recommend you all go out and buy, which has got all plays in, about for the name, because it is, as a dyslexic, names always just escape for me. But thank you. But yeah, I thought that was a really beautiful scene, that scene of the potential of liberation and experiencing pleasure, seen through the eyes of that character in the launderette.
Yeah, I mean, that was super, super important that that we have this full-on lesbian, heightened, sexual, delicious encounter, and that we see the possibility of that. And it's still amazing that lesbian sex is still so rare to be seen on stage. In a piece that I made a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I stand corrected, was the first time lesbians kissed, two Black lesbians kissed in a play about Black lesbians on stage in South Africa, in Singapore, in Britain. We do a lot of our kissing and lovemaking off stage in plays. But I was amazed, and that was like 10 years ago. So it felt really, really important to me that there was also a no holds barred kind of character in Shahana who enjoys her sex life. And yeah, that felt really, really important. It's incredible, actually, that the amount of resistance I had to stars, and how you said I wrote it a few years ago, and I did, and it's taken so long to get this play on, because even one LGBTIQ festival, which I won't mention, said that the piece wasn't queer enough to put on stage, to put in their festival. And it wasn't Homotopia, by the way, who really supported us. But and it was just like incredible, and that even kind of presenting lesbian sex, even presenting an intersex character, that people, because the central character is elderly, and struggling with her sexuality, and struggling with her, because it's not a sort of coming out sort of story or anything like that, that somehow that programmers couldn't see the queerness of the piece. So I'm delighted that the ICA saw it for what it is. I'm delighted that Tamasha saw it for what it is, and that it's touring now all over the country. So people listening to this, you can catch stars in Manchester and Birmingham and Bristol and Newcastle and Liverpool.
Yeah, I 100% recommend people following the links, going online and finding out a city near them where it's playing, and going and seeing, and also going and watching Mojisola's other play, Family Tree. Mojisola, thank you so much. I know you've given us, I'm so grateful for the time you've given us. I know you're massively busy with all this amazing work that you're doing. So grateful.
I'm only busy with trying to take my child to the dentist right now. So it's kind of like that. Thank you. It makes me look much more glamorous. Yeah. It's much more down to earth.
But really, really thank you. Thank you for being in all our lives, and thank you for your generosity and sharing with us. It's just amazing. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for talking with me, Valentino. It's a great start to my day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.